I thought we'd start with writing, Ian. One of the really striking things about you is just how extraordinarily prolific you are. I reckon 12 novels alone in under 30-odd years. I worked out they seem to be coming quicker, once every couple of years or so now.
2 or 3, yeah. 3, probably, yeah.
And I just wondered how on earth you restore the stock of ideas. How do you live enough between the novels to replenish the ideas supply? And where does hiking fit into the creative process?
Well, I don't feel prolific, so it's rather odd you should say that. I mean, I think of Updike or or for that matter Philip Roth as really prolific. And I do take quite a long time between novels, but I make time partly by saying no to people like you. It's very important, often with a real tug on the heart, and it gets harder and harder to defend that private space. I think this is true for most writers. Unless you're a real recluse, you're in the world, that world is hungry for ideas, opinions, involvement. And a lot of the people who are on the other end of the line are both persuasive, intelligent, and interesting, and it's always a little tug at the heart to say no, but it's absolutely vital. I'm one of those writers who are quite happy when a novel is finished to do nothing. There's a very nice line of V.S. Pritchett dismissing the work of Ford Madox Ford, in which he said that Ford failed to sink into the kind of productive indolence that is necessary for writing. And for me, indolence is catching up on reading, but also doing as much hiking as I can.
I was struck by a comment you made once about the actual business of writing, and you said that one of the things that academics often miss is that, and your exact words were, writing is a self-pleasuring act, which, apart from being a slightly off-colour image, I thought was fascinating, because so many writers describe the actual business of getting the words down as a sort of painful process. Do you actually get kicks out of the process of getting the words onto the page?
I mean, I think all writers are lying if they deny some pleasure in it. Pleasure principles are very strong. There are those moments when something goes well in the morning for half an hour or an hour. I try to describe this experience, and I think everyone's had it, and we don't have a good word for it. It's a form of happiness. I mean, one psychologist called it flow, which doesn't seem quite enough. Total absorption in trying to do something. It could be playing a game of tennis, or gardening, or cooking a meal, or writing a novel, but it's that wonderful suspension from time and from the narrative of your existence when you're simply absolutely lost to the thing you're doing, and you don't even remember who you are, and you don't even feel any pleasure at the time. And those moments, which I think are rare for all of us, but when we only know them in retrospect, it's when the doorbell rings and you pop out of it that you realize that you have been supremely happy, but not the happiness of laughter or exhilaration. And it's those that I really treasure, those moments when there's only the writing, only the page or the screen, only the thing itself. They're very hard to sustain, but every now and then, maybe once or twice a week, when things are going really well, there are those moments of pure absorption.
Where do you write? How do you write? What's the process?
I have a very nice study. And
describe it.
It's the first floor. It's the piano nobile of a Georgian house, which we're going to leave tomorrow. I can't believe it. Removal men are coming.
This is the house in Saturday.
Take me away. Yeah. There's a table. The table is one of the few things I ever built myself back in the early 80s. There's a large Apple computer on it. So there's lots of room either side for writing in longhand. And writing in longhand and working on a computer, I think, is perfect. I mean, so much better than the mechanical business of a typewriter.
So you start in longhand, do you?
I start in longhand. I write notes and messages and exhortations to myself. By the way, I feel apologetic about this. I can't ever believe that anyone's interested in these procedural questions. But since...
Who's not interested in this? We'll move on.
Let me off, quick. Yeah.
Stay with the longhand.
Okay. Can it really be interesting?
Yes.
A ring-bound A4 green notebook, which I get from Western Printers in Cleveland Street.
Lined or unlined?
Lined, definitely lined, but no margin. Black ink always. And I press medium hard.
And these are notes or the actual
These are
prose?
passages, bits of prose, and then sometimes, if I'm starting a chapter and it's, say, chapter 4, I write the word contains, colon, and then I think of all the elements that this chapter will contain as I understand it at that point. And sometimes it's really handy to, that comes very quickly, but not the order in which things will go down. Try out sentences. Sometimes I write plots of novels. I've found that one of the most freeing things you can do as a writer is to describe the novel which you're never going to be bothered to write. You have no burdens on you. Or you write the opening sentence to a novel that you're not going to write. You feel completely free. And sometimes I've written myself into a novel that way. I started Atonement that way with a careless sentence and then a paragraph, and then thought, well, maybe there's something here.
Let me take you back to 9/11, because one of the times that I did call you and ask you to write a piece was probably a few minutes after the second plane went into the second tower.
That's right, it was just after the second plane.
In 9/11, and I asked you if you would write on it, and I think probably 99% of writers would have said certainly not, and I could hear you sort of sigh on the other end of the phone and then say, well, yes, I guess so, I guess I have to. And I'm just intrigued by why you felt, you did at that point seem to feel a kind of need to engage with this huge issue that was happening, that seems to be, reflect a wider sense in you, that you feel compelled to engage with politics, with major international events.
I didn't feel at that point I was engaging in politics so much as just a sort of moral confrontation. My wife, Annalena, who was working at The Guardian at the time, had phoned me in the afternoon and said, Katz is bound to ring you. So I thought, oh, that's, I'm glad I'm
switch your phone off at that point?
No, I just thought, oh, that's fine, I've worked this out. I'm like everybody else, I'm too numb to do anything about this, so at least I'm forewarned and I'll say no. And then you came on and I started to say no, but my mouth said yes. I don't quite know, I felt almost as if it would be cowardly not to. In other words, if I'd finished a novel, I'd just finished Atonement, actually, so I was free. And I thought, well, if I can't do this, I can't do anything.